This week's shiur, as always, Lilu Nishmat of Mori Dober Meri Benu Alevi Mimarati Rachel Bada Rav Michael. And this week we have the privilege of talking about parshat Ki Taytzay, which has more mitzvot than any other parsha in the Torah. And we're going to focus primarily on one mitzvah today, and that is a very, very interesting mitzvah. It is the mitzvah that we're familiar. I think many of us are familiar with, called Ben Sorer Umoreh. But we're going to see some very interesting insights. So we're going to start right away with the actual psukim, and then we're going to go start trying to understand this parsha a little bit. Very, very interesting halacha. It tells us the following: Perek Chaf Aleph in Dvarim, Ki yeli ish ben sorer umoreh. When a person will have a son who is sorer, who goes off the derech, moreh, and moreh could mean a lot of different things. One is teaches, one is rebels. Again, different, very seemingly different meanings, but here it means someone goes off. Sorer means to stray, and moreh is to rebel. Einenu shomea, he does not listen to kol aviv, to the voice of his father, uva kol imo, and to the voice of his mother. The yisro oto, and they will warn him. V'lo yishma alehem, and he will still not listen to them even after the warning. V'tafsuvo avivimo, his mother and his father shall grab onto him. V'otzivo toel ziknero, and they will take him out to the elders of his city. They'll shamar komo, to the gate of his place. Now remember, the gate is really refers to where the courts were held. Even though we would think of a gate as an entrance and an exit, that's exactly what it was. But in ancient times, and probably even up to more modern times, the city gate was where business was transacted. There was typically a shuk nearby the gate. We find it with Avram Avinu. He goes to the gate to meet with the elders to find to be able to transact the business of purchasing Ma'arat Machpelah. Many other times in the Tanakh, we have this concept of Sha'ar Mikomo, of going to the city gates, or Sha'ar Ha'ir. The city gate is where courts met, where business was transacted. Anyway, they, the parents, presumably being the source, the last people mentioned, they will say to the Ziknei Iro, to the elders of the city, B'neinu zeh, this son, and they have to be actually point to the son who's actually sitting there. Sorer umoreh, he is rebellious. Sorer means he is strayed, and moreh, he is rebelling. Einenu shomea, he does not listen to kolenu, to our voice. Zolel v'soveh, he is a glutton and a drunkard. At least that's the way the commentaries type up these words, Zolel v'soveh. Urgamuhu, and they will stone him to death. Kol anshe iro b'avonim, all of the people of his city with stones, v'meis, he will die. Uvi arta rami kibecha, that same verse that we talked about last week. Uvi arta rami kibecha, you will eradicate the evil from your midst. The Chol Yisrael yishmu v'yiro, and all of Israel will hear and will listen. Or we'll see. Excuse me. We'll hear and we'll see. So the verse seems to say that there is some type of rebellious son who, even though he doesn't seem to have done anything particularly heinous, is guilty of murder. So the first thing we're going to try to do is try to understand a little bit about that. But before we do that, we're going to go into the Gemara that's going to give us some rather strange things. This is the Gemara in Sanhedrin, Daf Almud Aleph. By the way, the Mishnah in Sanhedrin devotes an entire, or at least begins a new parak, even though there's a previous parak that talks about all the cases that carry the capital punishment of stoning. Nonetheless, the parak Ben Sorer Umoreh, this halach of this Ben Sorer Umoreh begins its own parak, and we have all sorts of different nuances in the halacha, which are going to make it seem very, very improbable that we're ever going to have a case that this is going to arise. That's exactly what we're going to begin with. Okay, Rabbi Yehuda begins with the following. He says the following: Im lo hayta imo shaveli aviv. If his parents are not equal, literally equal, b'kol, in their voice, uvemareh, and in their appearance, uvekoma, and in their height, Eino nasa ben sorer moreh. The child does not become a ben sorer moreh. So in order for a child to be classified as a ben sorer moreh, he has to have two parents whose voices are alike, whose appearance is alike, and whose height is alike. My tamo, what is the reason? that Rabbi Yehuda expounds on this. The Amar Cross, since the verse says, Einenu shomea b'kolenu, he does not listen to our voice, singular kol shalanu, our voice, not kolot shalanu, not kolotenu, not our voices, but our voice. So therefore, it seems to imply that they have to speak with a common voice. Since the voice has to be similar or equal, their appearance and their height literally has to also be the same. Now, again, there are those that want to take that figuratively when it says "bikolenu" on our voice. It means that they speak with the same, deliver the same message. It's not that the child is playing one parent against the other. Again, a seemingly very important lesson in parenting coming just from this one little word of bikolenu. Although Rabbi Yehuda takes it in a completely different way, he says that they literally have to have the same sounding voice. As well as other physical characteristics that seem to be the same. Okay, so now the Gemara wants to ask the following question. Kaman Azla is who is, so who, if that is the case, then who is the following opinion being stated in the name of, that it says the following, Kaman Azla Hadatanya, who is the following, author of the following Breita? Ben Sorer Umorer. This case of a child who is rebellious son, lo haya, never happened, v'lo atid liot, and will never happen in the future. In other words, the requirements of the law to carry out this law are so strict, are so detailed, are so minute that it will never happen. It never happened, and it never will happen. The lama nichtav. If that's the case, this is a theoretical case the Torah brings only, not intended to be a practical, which seems to fly in the face of everything we know about Torah and mitzvot. We know that mitzvot are always given with a practical intent, that they are there to shape us, who we are. As a matter of fact, the Minchat Chinuch and many of the other commentaries focus many times on the fact that by doing mitzvot, one of the primary purposes of doing mitzvot is to shape our character, is doing them, is we have to repeat these mitzvot. We have to repeat them. For example, the mitzvah of tzedakah, Rambam brings down that a person who gives $1 1,000 times is much more praiseworthy than a person who gives $1,000 once. Because a person who gives $1,000 once, he did a tzedakah once. But a person who gives $1 1,000 times gets used to, becomes a charitable person. That's the purpose of the mitzvah. So how can we have a only theoretical mitzvah? It seems strange, the Gemara asks. Why is this whole halacha written if it's only a theoretical halacha? Our answer is darush v'kabel sachar, that we should expound it, we should learn it, and by learning it, and presumably there's maybe a little bit more to it than just learning it, the kabel sachar, we will receive the reward for fulfilling this mitzvah. How is that? Who is the author of that? Right? The Gemara say it must be Kaman Rabbi Yehuda. Must be according to Rabbi Yehuda, who says that the parents have to be exactly alike in voice, in appearance, and in height. So again, to be able to find two parents who are exactly the same height, whose voices have the same exact tone, pitch, etc., sounds pretty challenging to do. And especially when we add there are so many other layers that this is just quote one example of the new nuances of the halacha. There are many other examples that the Gemara brings down of very fine details that have to exactly be met in terms of how much meat he has to eat, how much wine he has to drink, where he has to get the wine from, where he has to eat it and drink it, how old he has to be, a very limited time period of when he is. All of these minutiae and detail lead us to believe that it's the probability of this happening is slim and none. And that's exactly what this Breita says. It never happened and it can't happen. Okay. So that's one opinion. The Gemara says that this Breita that says it never happened must follow Rabbi Yehuda. But the Gemara offers another possibility of who the person who says that it never happened could be. It could be Rabbi Shimon. Why? Because we learned the following Breita. Rabbi Shimon Omer. Rabbi Shimon says the following. Because he drank this seemingly insignificant amount of meat. It's basically, I shouldn't say insignificant. It's significant for one meal. It's insignificant in the course of time how much meat, and he has to drink a half a lug of wine in one sitting. Immediately his parents have to take him out to execute him. seems a very, very harsh punishment for just, going and stealing a little bit and eating a little bit of meat, drinking a little bit of wine, having a little party with money that he stole, and it, again, he has to, by the way, steal it from his parents. But okay, a different story. It seems very harsh. Ella, but Rabbi Shimon himself says, "Lo haya v'lo atid liyot." It never happened. But lama nichtav, and again, what we just learned, why is it written drosh v'kabel schar? So again, we have two different opinions who this could be that says that lo haya v'lo atid liyot. Now, Rabbi Yonatan, but that Braita ends with the following statement. Rabbi Yonatan says the following: Ani ri'itiv. I actually saw a ben sorer mora v'yashavti al kivro, and I sat on his grave. Now again, obviously, can't be that he never was and never existed, and somebody saw him and sat on his grave. So one of these sentences, or both of these statements that were whether you see are highlighted in yellow in front of you, what are going to be explained as not being exactly literal, not meant to be taken at full face value. One or both of them is going to have to be explained away because two are clearly contradictory. You can't say it never happened, and somebody can say, well, I saw it happen. Okay? So, by the way, I'm going to just go very quickly, and the Gemara is going to bring two similar cases of halachot that we have. One we had last week, this concept of ir hanidachat. The Ir Hanidachat is a city where all of the inhabitants, or a majority of the inhabitants, go and worship idols based on one person in the city, or a group of people in the city, convincing the entire city to go and worship idols. Again, who is the author of the Braita that says Ir Hanidachat lo hayta v'lo atida liyot? The second case of something that never happened and will never happen. If that's the case, why does the Torah write this theoretical halakha? Darash kabel schar, again, to be able to learn it so that you can receive the reward for fulfilling it. And again, in general, we're going to see that this darush v'kabel schar, I'll give this is the spoiler alert. Darush v'kabel schar is going to be taken in the sense of that when we learn these halachot, and we apply the negative of the halachot so that we realize what we're supposed to be doing so that it doesn't happen, we are going to be able to achieve the reward for learning them because we've learned to avoid them. That's the spoiler alert. Okay. So again, same thing with Ir Hanidachat. Come on to Rabbi Eliezer. That goes according to Rabbi Eliezer. At the time we learned Rabbi Eliezer called Ir sheyesh bo afilu mezuzah achat. Even if the city has in it one parchment, one mezuzah, it can't be Ir Hanidachat. And the probability that we would have a city in Israel that would fill this requirement that has nobody, even has one little mezuzah, seems very strange. My time, what is the reason why that is excluded? A city that has even one mezuzah can't become an Ir Hanidachat. Because we have to take everything that's in the city and burn it in fire. So my time. So therefore, even the ika mezuzah, after we can't burn a mezuzah that's kosher mezuzah, we are not allowed to burn perfectly good sifrei kodesh, things that a Torah scroll can't be burned. So therefore, we would never make such a city near Hanidachat because it would require us to burn things kodesh. And then we have the same thing. Rabbi Yonatan says, "Wait a minute, I saw it and I sat on the destructed the ruins of this city that were not rebuilt." Again, we seem to have a concept: is this only meant to be a theoretical halacha, or is it meant to be a practical halacha? And again, it's Rabbi Yonatan is the one who says the concept. It has to be a potential practical application. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in the Torah. And I'm going to skip the third one. The third one is basically the same thing with a house that gets tzara. We talk about that tzara of a person clearly, but tzara of a house, again, did it happen or did it not happen? And again, we have the same machloket there. Okay, we're going to skip a little more so we don't take too much. Now, just to give you a little more insight into some of the aspects that are required in order for this execution to be carried out are the following. Mishnah quotes the following. If one of them was armless, one of the parents was missing an arm, or was lame, or was a mute, or blind, or deaf, any of these people, in other words, both the parents have to be physically fit and emotionally fit and mentally fit in order for the child to become a ben sorer merit. Shenemar, and he brings for each of these, it says the following: the tough of Ivimo, they have to be able to grab him, so gedamim. So if he's a gidam, he's missing an arm or if his fingers, he can't grab the son physically, so it wouldn't apply. They have to be able to take him out. So therefore, lo chigrim, if they're lame and they can't take him out physically, doesn't work. The amru, they have to be able to say to the court, hey, this our son is a soror mora v'lo yumim. Therefore, if they're dumb, they don't speak, they can't, because the parents can't be soror, can't make the child soror mora. They have to be able to point to the child and say, this son, therefore lo sumim. They can't be blind. He doesn't listen to our voice. Therefore, if they're deaf, they don't know that he can't listen to the voice. And the same thing with if he was any of them. Again, seemingly also would apply also. The Mishnah continues that he has to be warned. It says, they have to warn him at first, and it has to be before court. And at the same time they give him the warning, they give him lashes. That's one of the requirements, is that they give him lashes when they warn him. That's the first time. And then if he still continues on his way, if he doesn't take this admonition, this warning, and he goes and does what he has to, still continues on his evil way, he has to be brought before a court, like any capital punishment case, has to be brought before a court of 23 judges. The Eino Niskal, and the capital punishment cannot be carried out at shiur sham shlosha rishonim. The 3 original judges have to be part of that 23 panel, or at least have to be in attendance at this trial, in addition to obviously the parents and any witnesses that they are bringing to the fact to prove that he did what they say he did. Okay, so all of these things all add to the improbability of being actually able to carry out this thing. Okay, this execution. Just want to give a little bit of insight into that. So now we're going to go to the parshat and see how do they try to understand the whole concept here of the ben soror mora. Is it theoretical or is it practical? Start the following. They had to announce. Now, again, remember we talked about this a little bit last week of the whole concept of the Chol Yisrael Yishmu V'Yiro. Does that mean that it had to be, and the execution was carried out in front at a public gathering on the Chag in front of everybody, or it just meant they had to go out and announce it throughout all of Israel? And here, Rabbi Rechai says the halacha here by the ben soror mora is bet and Poloni saklu et Poloni mipnei shoya ben soror mora. They have to announce that in such and such a court, so and so was taken out to be stoned because he was convicted of being a ben soror mora. Amru Chazal. Okay, now again, he's quoting the Gemara. We just quote Ki Taytzay. He paraphrased the Gemara that it never happened. And that's what we find in the Gemara that we just quoted. And he again paraphrases here. He says, Ben soror mora, they never were, never why were they written? Okay. So that's, he quotes the Gemara and he quotes it, basically paraphrases the two cases together. So now we have the question. Again, he elaborates on this question we just raised before. Why does the Torah have to teach us and write something that never happened? This is not the normal thing. We don't see something like this. His answer is that this is part of the divine wisdom of the Torah. To teach the people knowledge, deep knowledge of human behavior. How great our love for Hashem Yisborach has to be. This is to teach a lesson to everybody in terms of our relationship that we have to establish individually with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Parental, the greatest love in the world is the love of a parent for a child. This is the greatest love. But once the child drastically, incorrigibly goes and rebels against God, the Zeu Dark of Keselo, and this is going to basically destroy himself. It's a foolish path to follow. The parents are now obligated. They are going to have to fight and struggle with their love for their son and their love for Hashem, to the extent that their love for Hashem has to overcome their love for their child. They have to be the ones who bring him in. It's not that the witnesses who saw him doing what they do are the ones who drag him into court. The pasuk says they have to physically be responsible for taking him into court in order for this to happen. And again, is that going to happen? It seems very strange that a person would overcome his love for his child with the love he has for Kadosh Baruch Hu by showing that, hey, well, it doesn't matter. If you rebel against Hashem, we have to take you in to be punished. Ukvar ba ha'inyan ha'bechiyuv ha'godol ha'aval Hashem Yisbarach mefurish b'Torah b'inyan ha'akedah. We already have this characteristic, this topic discussed, showing the great love one has for Hashem Yisbarach, obviously in the story of the Akedah, story of Akedah Yitzchak. Ki Avram im hayot avato shel Yitzchak azav v'chazakah. Even though Avram's love for Yitzchak was strong and great, as Kodesh Baruch Hu says at the beginning of that you love, your love for Yitzchak should not be diminished. You shouldn't say, oh, because Hashem wants me to bring him his offering, that means I love him any less. No, we have to have this great love. He was the son of his old age after Avram really didn't even expect to have any kids. So how much greater was his love for him than a normal, unquote, an ordinary parent who, quote, expects to have kids, unquote. Even so, when Hashem commands him to bring Yitzchak as a korban, his love for Hashem overcomes his love for his son, and he immediately sets out and does it. So Avram Avinu is the one who sets the precedent that we have to be able to overcome our love, our natural love for our children has to be able to be subservient, submissive to our love for our Kodesh Baruch Hu. That's why Avram is called Avram, my beloved. Why Hashem chooses Avram? One of the reasons. That this mitzvah, by teaching about this mitzvah and explaining it and expounding on it, we are teaching the world the great love we have to have for Hashem has to be able to overcome all other types of love. And that's what they mean when it says dorosh. Expound this, teach it to yourself, and be able to achieve the reward for developing this relationship of great love with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that it overcomes your natural love for everything else. So this is Rebbeinu Chai quotes the name of his Rebbe. Now then, of course, Rebbeinu Chai says, okay, that's the first side that says it never happened, but we have to understand why. If it never happened, why does the Torah teach it to us? It teaches us to explain to us this great concept that we have to, our love for Hashem has to be over and greater than anything else, which is very challenging, by the way. I'm not saying that's easy to articulate, not so easy to do. Omash and Intusham. Now it's interesting because Rebbeinu Chai is gear, so was not Rabbi Yonatan in the Gemara there that says, oh, I saw it. It's Rabbi Yochanan. Now he's going to try to explain that. Because again, if I just said that it never happened, how could somebody say, well, I saw it and I sat on his grave, right? So let's go to here. Mashinim Tasham. What appears there, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Ani Yashafti al Kivro. I sat by his grave. I saw those things happen, or I sat on there. Efshar Lomar. It's one possibility. Is the Polygon Braita. He actually does disagree with the, he disagrees. He says it did happen, and I saw it. So he's arguing not about theoretically, he's arguing about it did happen in practice. He's saying he doesn't agree with the opinion that it never happened, because he saw it happen. Oh, or perhaps Shemahadi Rabbi Yochanan Lo Haya Ben Sorah Mor Gamur Ela Ki Inyan Av Shalom, that he wasn't a full Ben Sorah Mor. He didn't have all of the particulars. But what he's saying is, I saw a rebellious son who fulfilled all of the things of the Torah, and the parents took him out and executed him. But I saw a Ben Sorah, or a child who rebelled, but he didn't fulfill all the requirements. So it was similar, but not the same. But not the case where the Torah captures happened, because we just said the requirements are so detailed and so intricate and so virtually impossible that it never really happened. So again, Rebbeinu Chai, once he agrees with that opinion, has to try to explain away the second opinion. Now, as I said, that seems to be the more required. Okay, Maharal on the Gemara in Sanhedrin here. So, says the following. A couple of comments on by the Maharal here. Let's start from the beginning. Okay. He first says, Lo haita imo shava b'kol. If the parents don't have the same voice, Perush davar zeh, mashenatan Hashem yisparach b'torah mitzvah ben sorah umoresh, husar min haderech hayashar. The explanation of this thing that Hashem puts in his Torah, the mitzvah of the ben sorah umoreh, the Maharal says that we have the mitzvah ben sorah moreh is talking about a child. The reason for that, the reason a child goes off the derech, can often be traced to the parents. If they are not speaking with the same voice, their joint venture is not a valid joint venture. It's not an equal joint venture. In order for a joint venture to succeed, we have to be joint and going in the same direction. We have to both be focused in the same way and equal. They have to be parallel in all of these three things that we talked about. Of voice, they have to say the same thing and sound the same way and look the same way, and in height, that makes it appear that they're the same. In other words, the speech which makes us human beings, this has to be uniform. And how we look is our human features. So all of these things are what make us human and not animals, and therefore they have to be equal in raising the child. When it's not a full couple, when it's not an equal powered couple, if the son goes off the derech, the reason, in other words, if the kid is able to play one parent off the other parent, they're coming from different directions. One says, no, he shouldn't do this. One says, he should do this. No, yes. Then you're not going to have a child who's able to be raised, and it's not the child's fault. You can't blame the child when the parents give different messages. He does not get the judgment of a ben sorah because it's not his fault. It's the parents' fault. So a very, very powerful lesson. Maharsha wants to say that the whole chapter, ben sorah moreh, is to teach us this important lesson about parenting. And really, when he says that we have to understand this in order that we will have the reward of raising proper Jewish children. That's very, very important. That without that, we cannot aspire to raise Jewish children. Now, again, by the way, I'm not going to say that comes with any guarantees either, but Maharsha seems to be implying that a virtual guarantee that if your kid's getting different messages and different stories all the way through his life, he's not necessarily going to come out whole and well. So that parents have a very, very great responsibility in the rearing of their children. I think that is clearly what the Maharsha seems to imply is the critical component of this whole Gemara, of this whole halacha, is the role that parents have in the derech that their children will follow. Again, I will quote, the old metaphor, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, which, again, clearly is based on the fact that, yes, children learn from their parents first and foremost. We are the first role models for our kids, and therefore we have a great responsibility in how they are going to view the world, how they're going to see their responsibility, and more importantly, how they're going to see their relationship with the Jewish people and with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and of course with Eretz Yisrael. But again, Rabbi Yochai says this is the key metric here that we're talking about in Ben Tzorah Moreh. Now he goes to the other side. He reads TV Yeshavtu al Kivro. Wait a minute, I saw, we brought the other opinion and says, wait, it happened and I saw it. The Rabbi Yonatan Gabi Yerani Dachat. And the same thing he says about Yerani Dachat. Betema. And he asks the following question. Why is it that Rabbi Yonatan saw, why did he see he was the only one who saw these two things happen, quote, in real life? Why did he merit? I want to say merit is not right. Higiu means, why was he, I would almost say it's a punishment to have to witness these two terrible disasters. The yearly Loma. Okay, but it really, what Rabbi Yonatan is saying is really, again, Marsha is going to say, he really means it metaphorically. And here's how he means it. Kisava Rabbi Yonatan. Rabbi Yonatan says, Elu Shnei mitzvot. These two mitzvot are really not related to individuals or an individual city, but we're going to see in a minute what he means. Not an anonymous city. Ki Yisrael nikru b'ni b'chori Yisrael. We are called Hashem calls us his firstborn, B'ni B'chori Yisrael. Later on, we have a pasuk that says, Banim atem Hashem Elokechem, which we read last week. We are Hashem's children. V'hayusorim umorim. We, Am Yisrael, in our history, have strayed from the path. We've rebelled. We collectively did not listen to who is the voice of our father, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Who is the voice of our mother, El Imam, who Knesset Yisrael. That's the job of Am Yisrael, to correct each other, that we are supposed to be responsible for each other. And when we don't do that job, when we rebel, then we haven't listened to our father and we haven't listened to our mother. So he's Rabbi Yonatan, at least from Nashar's perspective. Rabbi Yonatan is giving this entire chapter of Ben Tzorah Moreh a metaphorical. When he says, I saw it, he means it in a metaphorical sense, that it refers not to an individual Ben Tzorah Moreh, but it refers to all of Am Yisrael as a Ben Tzorah Moreh. Baleim Ne'amar, and upon the Bnei Yisrael, it says, Yisru Oto, Hashem warns him below Yishma Alehem, and he still doesn't, they still don't listen. And if we go through Jewish history, we find this happening, that we have mitzvah we are supposed to be following, and we don't always live up to the expectations HaKadosh Baruch Hu set for us, and the mitzvah Hashem set for us. Amar, therefore, of Yonatan says, Ani ri'tiv yashafti al kivro. Ki b'vadai al kivrei asorim yoshed. He basically sitting on the kvarim of those who were punished through the destruction of what? What city became like an Ir Hanidachat? This is, of course, Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh, Nasa B'mishpat Ir Hanidachat. Yerushalayim, which gets the punishment of an Ir Hanidachat, of being totally destroyed, not once by the Babylonians, but twice by the Babylonians and the Romans. So again, what Rabbi Yonatan is saying is that figuratively, by seeing the destruction, the ruins of Yerushalayim, or even if it's only the ruins of the Beit HaMikdash, we are witnessing this concept of Ir Hanidachat, of a city that left derech, that all completely went off the way, and Hashem we had to destroy it. Umasher Katuv, however, concerning what is written, Vaita Tel Olam Loti Baneod, Masha Haita Nivneit. Wait a minute, how can we say it will be a destruction forever? It will never be rebuilt. Masha Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh. What he means is Yerushalayim, the holy city. Shelo haya krach nechmad kimota, because the Gemara says whoever didn't see Yerushalayim when it was rebuilt never saw a beautiful city. Like a holy city is supposed to be the most beautiful city in the world. The city will not, of Yerushalayim will not be rebuilt in its full splendor until HaKadosh Baruch Hu rebuilds it himself. Moshe Darshu, Sechet Bava, as the Gemara says, Ani hitzati eish b'tzion. Hashem is the one who allowed Yerushalayim to be destroyed through fire. Allah, leave no taba eish. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I have the responsibility to rebuild it. As we say every year on Tisha B'Av in the Tefillah of Nachem, that Hashem is the one who destroyed the city. We quote this Gemara, and Hashem is the one who will ultimately rebuild it. Kidita Perek HaKonis Ken Yira Lefarish. That is is, at least Marshal wants to explain, is Rabbi Yonatan explanation when he means I sat by, he sat and witnessed the destruction of Eretz, of Yerushalayim and the Churban. Or at least he saw it after the Churban. That there's no such thing, Rabbi Yonasan says, as a parsha that isn't to some extent fulfilled, and that is exactly what Yir Hanidachat means. And through the destruction of Yerushalayim, we see a glimpse of these two mitzvot being unfortunately carried out, the destruction thereof. Okay, that was Marshal. Marsha. What is einenu shomea b'koleinu? How does that teach us that everything has to be equal? Rabbi Shimon to come. Okay, again, now the Marshal goes a level deeper in this. He says, "Wait a minute. You've just told me that he really doesn't deserve to be punished with death. It's not really a death punishment. All he's done is he's stolen a little bit. So what? How could the Torah then say we have to carry out capital punishment if he's not worthy, if he doesn't deserve it? We can't say the Rosh expound and explain. How could the Torah say that somebody who hasn't done something that is deserving of death be punished with death? The Nira, it appears, so rare that this Ben Soramur this is obviously not somebody who did it something once he rebelled against his parents, but he's done it, is already established a pattern of rebellion many times. First, they have to warn him. And then they not only warn him, they take him to Besdin, and he gets punished with lashes for rebelling. And ultimately, he still continues in his rebellious way. Therefore, it seems to imply that he was never rebuked. I mean, obviously he was. What do you mean? It seems to imply that each time it was only his mother or his father, but not both of them biyachad. That's why it says, the voice, it has to be, the rebuke has to be delivered together with both of them sitting there. They have to be equal, because otherwise they can say, well, only my dad said it, my mom didn't care, or my mom said my dad didn't care. So again, we have to both be speaking and both be chastising him for the same things. There has to be shikol shneim shavish yucholomar she'asaver b'chol hatochachot shelo yirak mi'echad mem omi avi v'imo. Because if they're not equal, you can say, oh, it was only my father cared, my mother didn't care, or my mother didn't care, or my father cared. They have to be equal. I still, if they just, because their voice is the same, if they didn't look the same, it doesn't matter. The davar zeh and therefore, he says it's impossible that they could be equal in every single physical aspect, so that the child felt that he was getting a consistent message from both of them. Therefore, lo hayav lo atid liyot. That's why it couldn't possibly be. Okay, that's the first one that says, so many different requirements, it couldn't possibly happen. Then we get to Rav Shimon, who says, wait a minute. Why is he punished with death? Because the Torah understood human psychology, understood that if he's already at this tender age, again, we have to understand, I didn't say this before, I'll say it now, that the age limit of Ben Sorah Moreh is from the age of 13 to the age of 13 and a quarter. So it's a very, very limited time period during which he can become a Ben Sorah, and he has to do all of these things. He has to steal, and he has to eat, and he has to do all, and get warned, and go to court and be lashed. All these things have to happen within that same 3-month period. So therefore, it's very, very unlikely that it'll happen. But Rabbi Shimon's opinion that the Torah understood that if this child at this age is already doing these terrible things, he's going to grow up to become a real no good name. As we say later on, but what the Torah understands, and Shimon seems to understand, is even if we are to assume that the child did these things, that's not going to be enough for his parents to take him out and say, hey, let's execute the kid. They certainly don't realize, they're not looking forward to saying, oh, he's stealing, tomorrow he's going to be a murderer. They don't think that. They think, okay, he'll get over it. This is a phase he's going through. He's a young kid, he'll go over it, They will assume that he will ultimately get better. He'll get straightened out. Okay, he's a little bit off the dock, but he'll straighten himself out. And they will what? They'll have pity on him. It will never happen that they will not consider, they will assume that he will straighten out and they will have pity on him because of one piece of meat that he stole, and they'll say, okay, he did, he's a kid, we'll get over it. The lama nichta. So why is this whole parsha written? El derosh, we have to expound. She'avi v'imo, who has to learn? Not we, the Talmidei Chachamim, not that we don't have to learn it, but the primary students of this lesson are avi v'imo yidrishu. They have to expound. Torah yigia l'sof dato. That the Torah does understand that if we don't curb his behavior now, he will ultimately become somebody who is, because you're rightly sakel. He will become something, he will grow into something that will ultimately be deserving of the death penalty. He will become a rebeller to the extent that he will ultimately murder or do other things that will lead him to the death penalty. Which learning and understanding this depth of understanding that if we don't fix this, nip this in the bud before he gets to the point of committing crimes that he is worthy, that carry the death penalty, we have to nip it in the bud. And because of this, the reward will be that what? They'll be able to properly direct the child into the right path so that he will not fall to this thing. As the Gemara says, how can women who generally, at least in the time of the Gemara, were generally homemakers who didn't go and sit and learn Torah and weren't out in the public doing lots of public mitzvot, how do they get reward? That they are able to raise their children. A, they raise their daughters to be proper mothers, and B, they raise their children to the right derech. Because again, the mother is primary, the one who is at home, who's running the household, who is raising the children specifically in their formative years. She's the one who's most responsible for their upbringing. Because the father in those days was one who was out busy earning a living. How often was he home? How often did he interact with the kid? Unfortunately, people don't take the musar of this parak to heart. Each mother protects her child. Even if he's done things that really are terrible, that really require him to be punished. And they don't try to correct their children. And therefore the children don't even sit and learn Torah. They go off and do all sorts of other things. Why was Yerushalayim destroyed? Because the children, the young children at the young age, were not being brought to learn properly, and that is why this mitzvah is very important. Very, very important. I'm going to end and close with one very, very interesting thought. I hope I have the right page open here. This, by the way, is quoted from Rav Nachum Rabinovich, a contemporary who was the Rosh Yeshiva in Malei Adumim for many, many years, was niftar a few years ago, and he writes the following concerning this law, which again, just to summarize really, the very fact that these laws appear in the Torah serves a crucial educational purpose. The concept of study it, Derosh, Kabal Zachar, and receive reward means that one who studies these laws cannot but be gripped by panic. It is impossible for him not to be deeply affected. The mere study of these laws can open shuttered eyes and closed ears, fulfilling the verse, and all Israel will hear and be afraid. There is no reason for these dreadful punishments to ever actually be carried out. And here again, he's referring, as I said, to these two cases of Ir Anidachat. Actually, he's talking about all three: the Ir Anidachat, the Tzarat, and the Ben Sora Morer. The reward for studying them is that they will forever remain purely theoretical. That's the reward for learning them, is that they should remain theoretical. School children who are made aware of the laws of the wayward and rebellious son will never adopt his attributes. Community that teaches its members about the city led astray is assured that no idolatrous root bearing gall and wormwood will ever flourish there. One who has learned to recognize God's hand in natural phenomena and catastrophes will not need a plague of tzaraat upon his house to contemplate repentance. And now he closes by saying the same applies to all mitzvot. Even after they've achieved their goal of bettering human life, they retain their didactic power. Even as humanity has advanced beyond the minimal level that certain mitzvahs are there to ensure, studying the particulars of those mitzvot can stimulate new thinking and guide those generations to even greater advancements while preserving past achievements. Even after the idolatrous impulse was eliminated, contemplating the halachot of idolatry leads us toward greater recognition of true spirituality. The more we are convinced of the severity of the sin of idolatry, the more we develop inner longing for true sanctity. Nation that absorbs the Torah's ideas and values slowly builds up immunities to vulgar temptations. So again, what Rabbi Rabinovich is saying, as many of the parshanim are saying here, again, to close very simply, these mitzvot, this specific mitzvah is there so that we should understand the depth to which we have to try to achieve a relationship with our children so they will understand their role, but even more so, we have to be the role models for them in terms of our awareness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of our commitment to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of our commitment to learning Torah, of our commitment to Jewish values, of our commitment to keeping, not just learning about the Jewish values, but to keeping the mitzvot. And we hope and pray that we were able to do this in a way that should bring merit to us, to our children, and ultimately we will be zochet to kula shleim mehev yameinu. Thank you all. I apologize that I can't open it up for questions because this is being done not live. So thank you all, and I hope everyone has a good rest of the week. And we'll see you, Be'ez Hashem, next week back in the regular time slot live.